Welcome to the Quantum Healer. I'm your host, Dr. Tracey Allshafer, and I'm here today talking to my friend Scott.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
We're going to be talking about CranioSacral Therapy today, which is, I don't like to call it a massage, but I guess it's a type of
It's a type of what I use therapeutic body work. So massage is a type of therapeutic body work. This incorporates a lot of methodology, can incorporate a lot of methodologies around massage and massage techniques. But it is specifically different in its approach.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should get into how you came to this modality. How did you find out about it? When was that? And
it was in the mid-90s, and I was at a massage school, Center for Transpersonal Body-Mind Studies, which is no longer there. And they had, amongst them, a lot of the massage courses and techniques where you're being taught, they brought in craniosacral therapists for a level 1 craniosacral workshop. And I would love to tell you that I was immediately struck, like this is absolutely an epiphany, this is the beginning of incredible work. But at the time, I didn't quite totally grasp the concept of this 10-step protocol, which was the beginning of work that John Upledger had created.
And John Upledger is the man who first developed cranial?
It was really developed, there was somebody named Dr. Still, Andrew Still, who actually ended up meeting with Dr. William Sutherland, excuse me, not Sullivan. And it was Dr. Sutherland that discovered that when you compress some of the cranial bones, he believed that the cranial bones were not fixated as everyone else, as people grow into adults, that they actually flowed in a specific pattern and rhythm. And if in fact that were true, if he applied pressure to a part of his cranium, his skull, that he would have there would be an effect. So he had developed a helmet.
Oh, okay.
It would put pressure on a cranial bone, and he found out that the story goes that it caused him to pass out.
Wow.
But he realized there is some kind of interconnected concept between what's happened with the body and how the cranial bones move or don't move. And at the time, I don't believe he really understood the cerebral-spinal fluid and how that actually worked and moved. But that was his discovery, that this had something to do with the way a person behaved and the way a person physically reacted to life and was able to function.
So it sounds like there were several people that were involved in the full development of
and the creation of it.
This technique.
Right.
And that was in the 70s and 80s, I guess.
Actually, Dr. Still was in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then, forgive me if my timelines are incorrect, he was actually involved in the Civil War as a medic.
Okay.
And anyway, it ended up being passed down from him to Sutherland, to Dr. McGowan, who then eventually helped to teach Dr. Upledger.
Okay.
And Dr. Upledger found that the craniosacral system in and of itself, which he was an osteopathic physician, all these people were osteopaths. So they took these techniques, he took these techniques that were somewhat specific to osteopathy and brought them into the mainstream.
So just to back up for people who don't maybe understand all the terms, we're talking about cranium, which is the head or the skull more precisely, and then sacral is the sacrum, or how would you in layman's terms talk about that area of the body?
It incorporates the entire being, craniosacral therapy. So the basis of it, the basics of it, or there's a membrane that surrounds the spinal cord. There's 3 membranes. There's the pia mater, the arachnoid, and the dura mater.
Okay.
And it was discovered by Dr. Upledger that these membranes, there's a fluid, the cerebral-spinal fluid is in between these membranes, and then it has its own rhythm and movement. And whenever that rhythm or movement is affected in one area of the body, you can't adjust one part of the body without affecting the whole. So it looks at the whole picture of the whole body, the whole piece. So it's cranium, sacrum, everything in between, and all the nerves and muscles and fascias that are attached to all of that.
Wow.
It's a lot of words, but one of the things that John Upledger discovered was that this can be taught to lay people, because he had an instance where he had a lot of people coming to him. He didn't know how. It was only one or two students that he was teaching. He couldn't take care of it all, so he would show people how to use these techniques at home.
Oh, wow. So it's not, you mentioned something about a 10 steps.
A 10-step protocol.
Protocol.
So that's how I was introduced to this, was a 10-step protocol. I thought, well, why am I working with this part of the body if I understand that I'm drawn to this area of the body? That's where there seems to be a problem.
Right.
Realizing fully that if you're having, in case you can identify with this, if you're having shoulder pain, it may be from some other component, maybe some other injury, some other trauma. There may be other areas of the body that need to be addressed first.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm not saying there's something the teacher did that I didn't get. I think that's really what it was. I just didn't get it. And it wasn't until years later in the 2000s, it was probably about in 2000, that I ran into a medical doctor who was a chiropractic doctor, and all that she did was CranioSacral Therapy.
Wow.
And she said there was an incident on a reservation that somebody got hurt, and she asked me, she said, I understand you do therapeutic body work, you do energy work, can you help me? So we worked on this individual together, and I was like, it was like we were completely in sync, talking the same language. And after the session, she said, you have to learn how to do this. She took me under her wing. I was flying back and forth to Seattle, to Wisconsin, and getting training from her. So that's kind of how I came about, the roundabout way of describing what it is and how I came about doing these techniques.
So you only do craniosacral therapy now? Is that your niche work? Or?
That's my niche work. I do some distance work, some consultations over the phone, but my main umbrella is craniosacral therapy. And of course, because I have a background in so many other adjunctive therapies, Reiki, massage, shiatsu, reflexology, I do incorporate some of those things into each session.
Yeah.
And the idea being that we address the person where they are, and what their needs are in this particular moment as they're showing up.
And would you say that you're also, I don't know if you want to use the word, in like meditation or channeling or something, that you're just kind of connecting with whatever the person is needing at that time?
I think that a lot of, the work that I do is very intuitive, as I have a strong background in intuition and creating and cultivating that. But this type of the cranial work can be taught to just about anybody, and I believe we all are intuitive. We just kind of ignore that aspect of self. But the work that I do is more intuitive. So the idea is that there's an inner physician, right? And that this inner physician, which is your whole being, given the right resources, the body will heal itself. So all I'm doing is paying attention and listening to what that body is presenting to me, what that whole being is presenting to me. As many times I have people come in where they're like, how do you know that about me? It's part of our energy field, whether you want to call that mysterious or spiritual or intuition. It's part of that energy field that can be picked up. And I work with that, and it helps to feel the rhythm of the cranial system. So it's the intention and attention. That's really what I like to think of it. It's the reason why it works so well.
And would you say that you kind of put yourself out of business when you work with people?
I think it's I do say that a lot to clients.